welcome, people of the World Wide Web. So it is the 30th of October. Yes, the 30th of October. And why is that date synonymous? So this is the date that the Crow movie originally kind of takes place, the first starting point. So yes, this is a video about anything and everything The Crow. This is not kind of discussing a brand. This is just my favorite movie of wanting to go into everything and anything about it. And obviously with the latest movie version out of it, I thought it was a good time to discuss it. So anybody who does or does not know, The Crow is basically, its first incarnation was as this comic book. This is a trade back that I've got. It was created by James O'Barr, and then you can see it's more or less black and white and very kind of graphic. It follows the same kind of story that the movie does, in the fact that you have Eric and Shelley. Shelley is killed by a gang of criminals, and then that he is brought back via the Crow to take vengeance on that. What a great story there is within that. But there's more to it. So why is it my favourite movie and why do I enjoy it? So as I said, this is by James O'Barr. So James O'Barr, if you don't know, if you have the original Crow movie, there is like a 40-minute documentary with him on it where it explains most of what I'm going to talk about. You can find it on YouTube as well, I believe. So yeah, so James O'Barr unfortunately grew up quite a lot in the foster system. He was quite an unusual child because of growing up in a foster system and not really being adopted and stuff. He very much kept to himself, and one of the things he used to enjoy was drawing, and so this passion took him on until his teenage years. He was still, as a teenager, he was quite, I believe he was then fostered and had parents and stuff like this, but he was an unusual child, didn't have many friends, or from what it read, he didn't have many friends. He kind of kept to himself, but he still liked his drawing, but he kind of viewed the world as very dark because of just the life he'd been brought into, which is understandable. And then he met a girl who basically turned it all around. She was kind of the big light. I think he met when he was 16. She was the love of his life. And basically they spent 3 wonderful years together, more or less every day, like you do when you have these romances in high school. Unfortunately, due to when they were going to graduate, a drunk driver went down a side street and unfortunately killed the love of his life. This unfortunately has left obviously a lasting mark on James O'Barr himself, which is understandable. It would for anyone. Obviously, drink driving, I would never condone. You know, people don't think of the consequences of how many people are affected by this. James, as a consequence of this, obviously graduated and then went on to other things. He went on to work in the scrapyard and other jobs back and forth. While he was doing that, he was still doing the drawing side of things. And as drawing took on, he started to become get better and better at his skill. And obviously one of his kind of therapies for what had happened is the story of, you know, his love being taken away from him by an evil act. And this is where the Crow story comes from. It comes from a very, unfortunately, James O'Barr had to go through a lot of sadness and loss and pain for us to actually get this story. And as he says, when he was drawing it right, the chapters are so short because he couldn't do, he'd spend a few days doing certain pages and then he'd have to leave it alone because it was too painful for him, which is totally understandable. But if you are a massive fan of The Crow, obviously this has all, you know, it was nice for him to share his story for us to have lived, you know, for what he lived. Obviously, as time went on, obviously his art got better, and obviously he befriended a comic store who then he showed the artwork to. It got published, and within a few years was picked up to the rights to become a movie. A great movie, unfortunately filled with tragedy. So I've got toys and stuff. So here, obviously, this is I think Sideshow toy that was released. This was bought by an old girlfriend. He talks. Oh, the sound's going a bit. If you can hear that. I don't know if you're hearing that, and apologies if you're not. But yeah, so this is giant Crow figure. I have it always. The Crow's foot drops off just because of how they make it. It is not the greatest. So yes, so we have the making of the Crow. So the Crow went through many iterations, stuff like this. Potentially, I think it was going to be maybe a musical at some point. But the director, who then went on to make the move, and with Brandon Lee, they managed to put it back to its source material and keep it quite true. There are obviously a few changes; it doesn't exactly match, but it matches a lot. The introduction of Sarah, the young girl, and the cop, Ernie Hudson and stuff, made it quite a compelling story. Back in the day, back in the 90s, the music, these people got it all right, but unfortunately, during the filming of this movie, Brandon Lee, the main actor, was shot and killed. So a very interesting book. Plug now. So this is what I got. So this is the unofficial guide, basically, or the story behind the film. This tells you everything that went on and basically details the kind of lawsuit that went on. So anybody who doesn't know, Fun Boy, blonde hair, he is in Darla's apartment, and the crow character comes through the window during the original filming of this scene. Obviously, they had a prop team working on a prop team, have the guns, they have fake bullets, what they use. And essentially what it is, it's a round disc and then it has the cap on top. And when the pin hits the circle disc, it ignites the powder and it shoots the puff of smoke up, and that's what you see it. Now what happens, because of this, the little circle disc gets stuck in the barrel, and obviously once they've all been fired, obviously you can't fire anymore. They should be cleaned out, put back in the truck, and then used again. And unfortunately what this was, it was used on another set, on another scene. The gun was put back, it was not cleaned, and unfortunately when it came to this set, they needed to get a gun. Someone rushed, grabbed a gun, put another pellet in it, so to speak. So what happened is the bullet that was, or the fake bullet that was in there, the pin was hit, it ignited the smoke or what was to create the spark, but unfortunately there was another pellet further down, and that was what was launched, hit Brandon Lee more or less around the heart and killed him. Obviously the studio were done for negligence, and I think the prop team who handled it were also done for negligence, and there was something that was done. I say very sad, but kind of what there's been quite a bit of symmetry. So you have kind of James O'Barr, who suffered this loss. He was gonna graduate with his girl. It's quite close. I think it's quite close to prom, and obviously she was killed. And unfortunately, in this, Brandon Lee was killed just over 2.5 weeks from when he was supposed to marry the love of his life. I say it's very dark, very sad, and this is all, I don't believe there's any superstition to it. I think it's just unfortunately a bad set of events that link this up. But if you watch behind the scenes and you watch the whole director's or direction of Brandon Lee, of him talking, and he would have been an amazing actor if he was around today, but unfortunately that is not the case. So yeah, so always a good read. I like this. I know it's not highly regarded because it's not like the official or anything, but it's loads. So this takes us on to the movies. So I very rarely double dip, and as you will see, I have a few kind of movies, but we will go into each of these. So first off, I did have the DVD, but then I upgraded to the Blu-ray, and this is the movie itself. 1994, 40 years old, a great story. A bit of it could be a bit luck and timing and stuff like this, but the right music was chosen. It had a solid story. It had a solid cast that helped it, and just this understanding of what is essentially, like James O'Barr considered the girl of his dreams to be, is you have this pure person who was taken away for no fault of their own, and some vengeance that he would have loved to have had. I don't know whatever happened to the drunk driver. That has never been, I think, disclosed as far as I'm aware. So this is where the story comes of where he could actually get revenge. Unfortunately, that it meant that he would have to die as well within the storylines, or the male character, but that is where the film went to, and it was great. I say, unfortunately, the actor who played Fun Boy, he was quite scarred and didn't act for a long time after this, which I can imagine it wouldn't do. But I say The Crow's a great movie, great soundtrack, it works. I say I've watched it at the cinema this year because they re-released it, and it is great, and I've got the 4Ks, and even the 4Ks are really good. I recommend it. As I've said, if you look at the back scenes, there's interviews with James O'Barr and Brandon Lee, and I would advise, if you ever just have an insight to their world and what goes on. This is always going to be regarded as my top grade. Now, it's not to say someone might make an even better movie. Who knows? Because nothing is impossible. But what was to follow from these movies? Well, actually, let's rewind a bit. So, apart from these, obviously, they did bring a steelbook out, so I did get both copies of the steelbook. I did prefer this one more, and I believe this has the additional material. It has the poster that, if I just turn there, you will see the poster hangs there. That is always kind of out of scene. And that is the one that I opened. I kept the sealed one just because you never know if one copy would get damaged. And I do like the image of this as well. Only movie I've double dipped, and I have like 3 copies of it. But it is my favourite movie, so I think I'm allowed to on that stance. So yeah, so What to Follow was from when this 1994 movie, then they wanted to bring another movie out. So it was very soon that a second movie was greenlit. And this is it, Vincent Perez is Crow, City of Angels. What they did is they took a different story. So you have a dad and a son. The dad and son get killed, and the dad comes back to get revenge. It's a little bit of a different story. They take a few elements from the original one. So Eric is a mechanic in the books. So they did it rather than a musician, how he is in one. And stuff. It's shot quite well. It has Iggy Pop, so Fun Boy, who is in the first movie, that character from the books is created on Iggy. Is it Iggy Pop? Or have I got that wrong? I just let me Richard Brooke. Iggy, it is based on Iggy Pop, so they had Iggy Pop in this one. Right or wrong, it is a very kind of different world, but it is a continuation from the first movie because this has an actress playing Sarah, the young girl from the first movie, as an adult, and she is tied into this. I didn't mind having the link and aging her. The actress is quite good, but it kind of does portray that everything that Eric did for her to kind of have a good life means she had a kind of rubbish life from the sounds of it, and I didn't quite like how that went. Vincent Perez, I liked him. I didn't mind his Crow, and I didn't mind his human one. It was a very different style, but what they had is when this film was made and all put together, unfortunately, before it got released with screenings, the marketing and team decided to recut it to be very much more like this movie, and thus this is why it received poor, because literally you're trying to kind of do a remake 2 years after you've even done it. I think it was 96 this movie was out, but yeah, it's kind of like you're doing a poor man's recut. It has a lot of stuff going for it. I think, you know, going down that different route is a very clever idea. You know, because the Crow does have a job, it carries the soul into the afterlife and all this stuff and brings it back for vengeance. So it doesn't mean to say your loved one has it, you know, and him and his son are quite pure, and I think that it meets quite a lot of the requirements of the core elements of the Crow story. So then we lead into the next one. So this is the Crow Salvation. So good old Kirsten Dunst, and then obviously we have Eric Morbus. I think he went on to be in the first Resident Evil movies and a few other TV series. Now this is a slightly different one. So this is a young lad who basically is found guilty of his of her sister's murder. They were a couple. They were going out. They had an argument in a van. She winds up dead, and he basically gets convicted and he gets fried, and that's basically it's false. You know, he was set up, and obviously there's a scar on someone's arm that he's kind of looking after. This is where it kind of switches from, I think, a bit more of a serious movie to almost coming into a TV movie a little bit. The Crow figure and the makeup isn't makeup anymore. Him being electrocuted alive is kind of scars in it. And he has kind of the boiler suit, and he has kind of a little bit of a different look, and I didn't mind this. I didn't mind them shying away from the traditional look and having a reason why that was there. You know, it made sense, him having a connection to his girlfriend's sister, because obviously the killer. Again, I liked that as well, and obviously there was a kind of link of it's all corruption and stuff like this. I didn't mind it, but it's where some of the stuff where you try to link it back to the original, and then he grabs a coat at one point, where's the boiler suit, or I thought it was a different look for him, and it worked quite well. He's obviously a young lad, no martial art background, but having the Crow, he's now a super martial art stuff. It worked for Bradley because he had the martial art background, and there was martial arts and fighting in the first one, but it wasn't a lot before he killed the person. It works slightly different in this movie, and the ending isn't as great because it seems that most people are corrupt in this film. But they took a leap, and the fact in this one he kind of merges with the Crow that he can fly off as well. I like that. I like them. Obviously, don't forget the movie is The Crow, and The Crow has quite a pivotal role in it. And when you take it out of it, it doesn't always work. So then you get to essentially what is the final kind of 90s 2000s reboot, and it is The Crow: A Wicked Prayer. So we have Terminator 2's Edward Furlong, Buffy the Vampire Slayer's Angel David Boreanaz, and American Pie's Tara Reid. So a bit more of a bigger cast. Essentially, David Boreanaz is deaf, part of a kind of Mexican gang, kind of based off the Four Horsemen, and he basically kills Edward Furlong and his love interest, its soon-to-be wife, and then he comes back. It plays out like a very TV movie. It starts off with the themes of Mexico and stuff and culture and supernatural stuff. I quite liked it. Again, they've taken a different angle, but it just seems silly. David Boreanaz starts getting powers and they start fighting, and it kind of almost feels a bit like The Mask when he fights the evil Mask from the Jim Carrey movie, and it kind of gets a little bit like that. Edward Furlong's makeup seems a bit strange, and he then knows martial arts at some point and stuff, but it's done very cheesy and stuff, and I just thought it started off all right and there's good themes, and then just it failed more as it went on, unfortunately. And I can see when it got to this point of why they didn't want to carry on any more of The Crow. So movie wise, there is one movie. We had the movie that was there in 2024, starring the guy who played it, the Scars, was it Alex Skarsgård? I've done a review on it, so I'm only going to recap very loosely. So the whole point of that movie and that film, it was a reboot and it wasn't a reboot, but essentially it just wasn't a good movie. They brought in a few good elements, but the whole kind of core element and the whole kind of core story is you have this couple that are very much way pure, and that one person is taken away from another, or both of them are taken away and they are killed. The newer ones aren't really portrayed that. They do have a few stuff that's linked back to it. They are called Eric, and they have the original names of the characters, only the first names, but obviously the love interest comes from a rich family, and they're met in this kind of mental institution and stuff like this, and the friends, it said it was bad across the board. It was kind of like, yeah, I don't mind, it's an anniversary doing a remake, but like the earlier movies take the premise of it, and I heard that very early days, because it went through a lot of hell when Jason Momoa was in it. I'm not sure if Jason Momoa would have been a right fit, but he was meant to be a cop, his family were killed, and he kind of gets vengeance for him, kind of a bit Frank Castle maybe, but supernatural wise, and I quite like that idea. Again, it's not, we've had the dad and the son done in the first follow-up movie, that doing a reboot now of like that, changing the names but having the Crow bringing back would have worked. To say in these movies, the Crow, especially the one, the Crow is there to help him, to guide him, to see through the eyes. Like later on they have the person merging with the Crow, but he still follows him in the latest one. The Crow's kind of there, it doesn't really do a lot, and kind of the guy keeps dying and going back to like this impasse world, and it's just like, you wouldn't have that. It's not like keep trying. It's literally like your mission out there is to do this or you die. Either way, you don't get a second chance. This is your second chance. You don't get third or fifths. So that's what I think of that. But we are not fully done with The Crow just yet. So outside of those, we did have this series, Stairway to Heaven. So here it is. This is Vision 2, so these are the 5 volumes of it, a few episodes of it. Basically, this was a TV series starring the martial artist Mark Dacascos. This has been the closest, I would say, follow-up to The Crow. This has the same story. He's killed, but he's kind of, Eric has to do more in the world for him to meet Shelley in the afterlife, which happens kind of at the end of season 1. I think there's 20-odd episodes, 22 episodes, but it is a great, not only does Mark Dacascos fit the role, and it works so much well of him trying to do justice in the world, because that again is another thing that is kind of missed, that even though he is out for revenge, within the first movie the other characters around pardon me, around him. He is out there to make their lives better. With the police detective, he's kind of he's helping the police right some wrongs within the world. With Sarah, he helps her mum get off the drugs and be a proper mum and have a better life for it. And there's little things like this that go to show like how pure a soul these are. Now, it's not to say that in modern day we aren't perfect, because we're not. There's a lot of flaws, but in this fictional world that they've created, the people have to be seen as pure, to be like, why have they been chosen over everyone else? And I think that as time has gone on, it kind of wavers a bit. I mean, even Edward Furlong, he beats somebody up quite badly in the movie, and I'm like, you're not really a pure soul. Why would the afterlife choose you when you're a very violent person towards people in the first place? But that has been anything and everything done at the Crow. There have been other comic books and stuff, but unfortunately I have not read them outside of this story. But again, it is my favourite movie. I say it is my favourite movie for a lot of tragedy. You know, you have the real life loss of James A. Barr's love interest. You then have the fictional loss of Shelley and Eric and what they had to go through, and then you had the real life loss of Brandon Lee, all within quite successions of when they were going to go into a marriage or a graduation or a wedding, and it just is very sad, but it has created a fabulous piece of work that I hope will live on for a very, very long time. It is a great kind of superhero-ish movie with a dark tone, but it is not a gore for, you know, they've not gore or violence for the sake of it. There's bits here and there, but yeah, it is just the kind of whole karma that there is good in the world and good can overdo evil. But yes, that has been The Crow on the 30th. If you've not seen the movie, the original, I'd recommend you to watch it. If you like it, please do feel free to watch any of the other stuff, even if you want to watch the latest movie. My opinion is my opinion, and because I love it, I still probably may own a copy of the new one. The steelbook looks nice, but I'm not paying the prices that they are. But yeah, feel free to watch any movie you want. I've been Cypher Sigma. Let me know any thoughts or feelings on this video down in the comments below. Otherwise, I'll see you in the next one.